I am reading now something that I found on the web, and it is a channeled message. And the channeler's name seems to be Lodge, and so that is to explain why I say Lodge here. Anyway, it's on the nature of personal reality. And I thought it was rather good that I wanted to read it for everyone on my channel. Lodge here. Tonight we shall discuss a bit on the nature of reality. The nature of personal reality is an issue that is easily confused on the physical plane. An important point to remember is that you do create your own reality. However, the variable that is left out all too often is that numerous individual realities overlap to various degrees. Thus, components of other people's realities affect your own. It is a factor that is important in structuring outcomes as you would have them. You cannot ignore the reality of others because it does affect you. Each individual entity emits energy. These energy patterns interact. In the past, in other cultures, certain individuals decided they would have a greater control of their realities by isolating themselves from their brethren. In this sense, they were controlling the physical influences of others. However, you must remember that the physical plane is the bottom level of reality, and it is affected by the planes above it. Obviously, the astral and the mental levels, which are the two closest, have the strongest impact. And there are beings that dwell at these levels that also intersect with our personal realities. And they too become variables that must be considered in the structuring of our own personal reality. Denying their existence, ignoring them, will not make them go away and will not dampen their influence because the energies are there and they affect you. Just like, for example, we could deny that the moon exists and yet the gravitational pull, the magnetic influences would still be a factor. We could go and live in a cave somewhere and never see it, and yet the moon, the physical body, would influence our reality. The thoughts of others impact upon us. They are also energy. They are incorporated in our individual reality. And it's the joining and configuration of thoughts that create the overall reality and serves as the cement that holds together this plane. It's said that you can't get vast number of people to work together, and yet that is the one factor that all of humanity has. They all agree that reality, physical reality, exists, and thus it is. The trick is to get them thinking in other directions, because the reality that is usually created is one that is more motivated by the regressive portions of the mind. And so in looking at the total picture of reality, you have 3 points of definition. You have your neutral point, you have your positive point, you have your negative point. These portions are replicated in nature. You have your darkness, you have your light, you have your male, and you have your female. And you have your ground, your firmament, if you will. And so due to the nature of polarities and your balances in the system, the concept of good and evil does apply, but only in the sense of evolution versus involution. And trying to ignore one or the other does not work. One is kidding. One is kidding themselves here on the physical plane when that is attempted. We cannot wish away the negative forces, just as we have no desire to wish away the positive ones. We cannot wish away the darkness to have perpetual light. Each phase has its necessary role in physical reality, and as long as mind is within a body, the forces will apply. We do not have to argument the negative side, but denying its reality will not make it go away. We cannot stand in front of a moving vehicle and expect it to pass through us or we through it unscathed because that vehicle is part of someone else's reality, and that energy form intersects our energy form with dire consequences. 'Tis true that reality is an illusion, but how can you get all portions of your mind to totally believe it for any great length of time? It takes a great deal of willpower and effort to overcome it. And just saying that you believe does not necessarily make it so. To truly believe is to transcend physical reality, but it takes more than simply saying that you believe it for it to be so. It takes more than saying that the negative forces do not exist, because they intersect your reality nonetheless. Now, it is important to rebuild your belief structures, and that is what many of you have been working on, the rebuilding of the belief structures. And yet I cannot help but emphasize that others' beliefs affect you and can impede your progress. And this applies not only to people around you, but to non-physicals as well. And on the lower levels, there are numerous entities that have regressive beliefs, and they surround people and pump them into their system. And so you can be sabotaged, not only by your own system, but that from other sources as well. And it is important to keep this in mind. No one can go onto a hilltop and isolate themselves and transcend the physical plane, because the physical plane and the astral plane and the mental plane is in truth what must be transcended. And physically isolating yourself only takes care of one segment. The other segments intersect you and are always with you. Denial does not change that reality. So in summary for this evening, there are three conditions to reality: the positive and the negative and the neutral. You do create your own reality, but that reality is intersected not only from the physical plane, but the non-physical levels, primarily the astral and the mental levels. It is these variables that affect your reality. You must take all of these factors into consideration before you can successfully control the outcome. You must have harmony on all the lower planes and generate a field of harmony around yourself to successfully say you are in control of your reality. This is why, as an example, that the most skeptical, or I should say closed-minded individuals, never have transcendental experiences of their own, and cause people who are capable of such experiences to have poor results. They send the energy that disrupts or interferes with the intended outcome. And as your sensitivities grow, you will become more aware of these individuals, and occasionally you will find one of your own enveloped in a cloud of this negative energy as representative of negative entities from the astral and, to a degree, the mental level. And in many instances they will not be aware of it, and it is your responsibility to point it out to them so they can take the necessary measures to eliminate the interference and the hindrance. Otherwise, such disruption can ride into a closed sphere such as this and cause unnecessary disruption. It is important to expand your view of reality to include that of others, and that is an important key to success in transcending the physical plane. You cannot look upon yourself as an ego sphere. You must take an allocentric viewpoint. That includes other spheres of reality or other individuals' realities and their dynamic effect upon your own. This from a physical as well as a non-physical basis. Contemplate this issue. Formulate any questions that you may have, and if you have such questions and you would like them answered, record them in some manner and make your intent known. Discuss them among yourselves, and if the issue is not resolved to your satisfaction, you can put in a request, and I or one of my colleagues will come and answer them from our perspective. Now that was the first night. Now this next part is Lodge here. Again, this is another night. Tonight we would like to continue our discussion of personal reality. And was said previously, personal reality is a confused issue on the physical plane. From our perspective, 'tis vastly different. As has been mentioned, a primary goal of existence is to return to the universal source of energy. in order to do this, one must overcome the first three planes: the physical plane, the astral plane, and the mental plane. These three lower levels are what comprises matter and form. And a man's normal condition is very limited. He is limited by his ordinary senses, his ordinary perceptions. These limitations can be overcome to a great extent by consciously establishing contact with the higher levels of existence. A way to view man in the physical is to liken the physical vehicle as a nucleus, and each subsequent plane as a layer expanding out into infinity. If you were to have an onion with a rock in the center, and you peeled away the layers, when you got to the rock you would have your physical reality and the physical vehicle of the individual. And so this rock is surrounded by many layers of reality. The further away from the center of the rock you get, the more abstract, until the ultimate is pure energy. The human vehicle and human consciousness are the highest vibrational frequency on the physical plane. The rest of the plane is comprised of lower vibrational levels and lower consciousness levels. And yet, under ordinary circumstances, the physical vehicle is still like a rock compared to the higher levels of existence. Thus, in the normal level of development, this rock, with its weighted consciousness, goes through its normal birth and death cycle. But the consciousness is still heavy, and after the death transition, it floats up a bit, but soon again settles to the bottom to complete another birth-death cycle. Each bit of weight that the consciousness can shed while on the bottom allows it to float a bit higher with each subsequent death transition, until finally the ensuing spirit does not settle back to the bottom, and the path of physical incarnations is broken. And this is done by raising the level of consciousness and increasing the magnitude of the energies that the entity handles while on the physical plane, by raising the frequency on the physical plane. You are moving toward the eventual sinking back to the bottom to be born again into the physical vehicle. If you think of it, the term light has at least two different conceptions. It is a quality, that of being not heavy, and it is a radiation that we can see with. Thus the movement towards the light. Think about it. In considering reality, the individual has to know self and expand the awareness of self. Would there be any questions? There were no questions. The transmission conditions are a bit difficult this evening, and it is difficult to transmit the information that we desire. Thus, we will terminate the transmission until the conditions are more favorable. The issue of reality is an important one. 'Tis also a confusing one. We will deal with it in more detail in the future, and we will present it in a form that is understandable to your present consciousness. This has been the shortcomings of literature on the topic over the last 50 years, and we hope to remedy this. And with that, I bid you a good evening.